The world of Miras was quiet once, filled with blue skies and shining rivers. Its people were not a warrior race. They lived in great cities that reached toward the clouds, and their children grew up learning music, stories, and the beauty of science. They believed that peace was the natural path for all beings. That belief ended the day the Zor came. The Zor were known across the stars as conquerors. Their ships moved from system to system, burning what they wished and enslaving what they desired. Their rule was not about building, but about breaking. When their dark fleet appeared above Miras, the Council of the World knew they could not fight. Their own ships were few, and their weapons were built for defense, not war. The Council met in their tallest tower. Around them, the ground shook as explosions rang in the distance. Cities near the oceans were already under attack, and the news was filled with cries of fear. The head of the council, a woman named Lyra, stood before the others. Her eyes were tired but steady. "We must send the signal," she said. "There is no other choice. If we do not, our world will fall in days." The others agreed, though their faces showed little hope. The signal was not meant for one empire. It was sent to the stars, calling for help from any who could hear it. Long ago, the galaxy had formed treaties about such calls. Any world in danger could cry out, and others might answer. Yet in truth, most empires ignored such cries. They calculated the cost, and if the world was too weak or too far, they let it fall. Still, Lyra pressed the final command, and the signal went out. Across the darkness of space, it carried a simple message. "We are the people of Miras. We are under attack. Our families are dying. We ask for aid. Please answer." The message repeated again and again, moving on beams of light across endless space. Hours passed, then a day. The Zor pushed deeper into the planet, and the skies grew heavy with smoke. The council began to despair. No answer came. On the second day, however, the screens in the council chamber flickered. A transmission arrived. Lyra hurried to open it, and the faces of strangers filled the room. They were not like the Mirasi, nor like the Zor. Their skin was varied in color, their eyes sharp and alert, their voices deep and clear. "This is Captain Reed of the Earth ship Resolute," the figure said. "We have received your call. The fleet of Earth is moving to your aid." The council froze. They knew the word Earth, the humans. Many spoke of them in whispers, calling them Deathworlders. Their home was said to be one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy, filled with storms, beasts, and endless challenges. To live there at all was seen as impossible. Yet the humans not only lived but built cities, fleets, and now reached the stars. One of the council members leaned close to Lyra and whispered, "They are not many. Their fleet is small. Can they truly stand against the Zor?" Lyra looked at the human captain again. His face was calm, his eyes steady, as if he were used to standing in storms. She felt doubt and hope fighting within her heart. "Captain Reed," she said, "we thank you for answering, but the Zor are countless. They will crush you." The man nodded slightly. "Maybe," he said, "but we will fight them. That is why we came." The words struck the council with silence. The Mirasi were not used to such resolve. Other races always asked for something first: land, resources, or control. Yet the humans asked for nothing. They only promised to fight outside. The chamber, The Zor warships moved closer to the capital. Their shadows darkened the skies, and the people of Meras fled through the streets. Yet when they looked upward, they saw a new sight. Human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, shining against the black of space. The fleet was not large, but its formation was tight, every vessel moving with sharp purpose. At the center flew the Resolute, its engines glowing bright as it turned toward the enemy. For the first time in days, the people of Meras felt a spark of hope. The Zor commander, watching from his massive flagship, sneered when he saw the human vessels. He did not yet know the meaning of their arrival. To him, they were nothing but small insects standing before a storm. He sent his forces forward, ready to crush them quickly. But in the council chamber, Lyra whispered, "They came. Even when no one else did, they came." And with that, the fate of Meras began to change. The fleet of Earth moved into position above Meras. Their ships were smaller than the Zor vessels, but looked strong and purposeful, built not for display, but for survival. Each hull carried scars of past battles, lines of patched metal and marks of fire. To the Merasi, it was strange. They had always thought of warships as polished and perfect, yet these human ships looked as if they had already walked through storms and refused to fall. Captain Reed stood on the bridge of the Resolute. His crew worked calmly, eyes on their stations, hands moving across glowing panels. Outside the windows, the planet Meras filled the view. Smoke rose from its surface, and explosions lit the night side. The cries for help had not been empty words. The people were truly dying. Reed felt a weight in his chest, the same weight he always felt when civilians were trapped in war. He turned to his officers. "Signal the council again," he ordered. "They need to know we stand with them." The screen opened in the council chamber once more. Lyra and the other leaders appeared, their faces pale with fear. The sound of distant strikes echoed even inside their walls. Reed's voice was steady. "Council of Meras, this is Captain Reed of Earth. Our fleet is here. We will hold the skies as long as we can. Prepare your people for defense on the ground. We will not let the Zor take your world without resistance." The council exchanged uneasy glances. One elder spoke, his voice heavy with doubt. "Your ships are few. The Zor will come with many more. Why risk your lives for us?" Reed met his gaze without flinching. "Because you called, and because no one else answered. That is reason enough." The words settled over the chamber like a shield. The Merasi were a peaceful people, unused to such certainty. Lyra lowered her head in respect. "Then we place our trust in you, Captain. May your strength be greater than our fear." Outside, the first wave of Zor warships moved in. Black, metal hulks, spiked and angular, filled the sky. Their engines glowed red like fire. From the largest ship, the Zor commander sent out a message on every channel. His voice was sharp and mocking. "Strangers from Earth," he said, "you dare stand between the Zor and our prize? You are nothing. Your fleet is dust compared to ours. Leave now or be destroyed." On the Resolute, Reed listened in silence. His crew looked to him, waiting for his reply. He gave a short nod, and his words were calm but unshaken. "We do not run," Reed said. "If you wish this world, you must go through us." The bridge of the Zor commander filled with cruel laughter. "Then you will die first, and these weak creatures will die after you. This is the fate of those who resist." The message cut, and in the next moment the battle began. The Zor ships fired first, beams of burning light streaking across the void. Human ships answered with missiles that broke apart into sharp fragments, cutting into enemy shields. The sky above Miraz turned into a storm of fire. From the surface, the Marasi watched in awe. Their people gathered in the streets, their eyes lifted to the heavens. They expected to see their protectors fall quickly, crushed by the might of the Zor. But something else happened. The humans moved with a kind of rhythm, each ship covering the other. They did not fight like the Zor, who relied on sheer size and strength. Instead, the human fleet struck with precision. Where the Zor were massive and slow, the humans were quick and sharp, darting between blasts and landing blows where they hurt most. On the council screens, the Marasi saw human ships weaving through impossible gaps, turning just in time to avoid destruction. Each time a Zor vessel tried to corner them, two human ships appeared at its flank, striking together until the larger enemy ship burned. The Marasi began to whisper among themselves. "They are so few," one said, "but they fight like many." Another added, "They do not fear. They do not flee." In the council hall, Lyra could hardly believe what she saw. These were the Deathworlders, the ones spoken of in tales with both dread and respect. She began to understand why. On the bridge of the Resolute, Reed kept his voice calm as he gave orders. "Group Alpha, push left. Beta, take high orbit. Keep moving. Never give them a still target." His crew answered with quick, firm voices, their movements sharp and disciplined. Every order turned into action without hesitation. The Zor grew angry. Their commander slammed his hand on the arm of his chair. "These humans are insects," he roared, "yet they sting. Crush them. Break them now." More Zor ships moved in, but the humans did not falter. Even as explosions shook their hulls, they pressed forward. To them, survival was not new. Every person on those ships had grown up on a world where storms destroyed cities, where beasts hunted in the dark, where fire and ice both threatened life. They had been shaped by struggle, and in space that struggle became their strength. The first wave ended, and though the human fleet had taken damage, they still held the skies. Several Zor ships burned, their wreckage falling into the atmosphere. The Marasi people cheered for the first time since the invasion began. In the council chamber, Lyra placed her hand over her chest. "They fight as if they were born for this," she whispered. "Perhaps the stars sent them here for us." And as the battle paused for the briefest moment, Captain Reed prepared for what he knew would come next. The Zor were not finished. The real test was still ahead. The first clash had ended, but the war was far from over. The human fleet hung in orbit, their ships scarred and smoking but still alive. Below, the people of Miraz filled the streets, pointing toward the sky with voices full of awe. They had expected to watch their defenders fall quickly, yet the humans had stood like iron against the storm. But in the dark void above, the Zor commander was not finished. His fleet stretched far beyond what the Marasi could see. Reinforcements poured in from the edges of the system, dozens of heavy cruisers sliding into formation. Their black hulls gleamed under the light of the twin suns, and their engines burned crimson like angry eyes. On the Resolute, alarms rang as the new contacts appeared on the screens. Reed stood tall on the bridge, his hands gripping the rail. Before him, his crew looked to him for direction. "Captain," said his first officer, a calm woman named Hale, "they are bringing in everything they have. We are outnumbered more than 10 to 1. Reed nodded slowly. Then we fight smarter. Signal the fleet. All groups shift formation. We'll not meet them head-on. We'll cut them apart piece by piece. Orders spread across the human fleet. Engines roared, and the ships moved as if they were dancers in a deadly pattern. Small strike craft swarmed from their hangars, darting between the larger vessels like fast-moving sparks. The Zor commander sneered at the sight. To him, this was no battle. It was a hunt. He raised his clawed hand and gave the order. Advance. Break them. Leave nothing standing. The Zor ships surged forward. Their weapons filled the void with burning lances of light, a storm of destruction that shook even the strongest shields. The first human ships dodged the assault, twisting in sharp turns that defied belief. Where Zor vessels lumbered forward, with brute force, human ships spun, dipped, and rose like predators circling prey. They slipped past heavy fire and returned it with sudden strikes. A destroyer named Hammerfall cut across the enemy line, launching torpedoes into the belly of a Zor cruiser. The explosion lit the sky, and the massive ship split apart. On Meras, crowds watching from the cities erupted into cheers. They could hardly understand how so few could stand against so many. But the Zor pressed harder. Their numbers filled every corner of the sky. They struck at the Resolute, sending wave after wave of fire toward its shields. Sparks flew across Reed's bridge as the ship shook. "Shields at 40%, Hale shouted. "Hold steady," Reed commanded. His voice was calm, yet there was a fire in his eyes. "This is what we came for. Every second we hold, we keep the people below alive. And that is why we fight." The crew steadied themselves and returned fire with even greater precision. The Resolute's main guns roared, smashing holes into the armor of an enemy dreadnought. Meanwhile, human pilots in small strike craft moved through the battle like swift shadows. They did not try to meet the enemy in strength. Instead, they used speed. They slid under enemy ships, targeted engines, and struck weak points. Every Zor vessel that fell made the others rage louder. From the council chamber, the Marasi leaders watched. They whispered among themselves in disbelief. "They fight as if death is nothing," one elder said. Lyra answered softly, "No. They fight because they value life. That is the difference." Still, the council could see the danger. The human fleet was brave, but bravery did not erase numbers. Every minute brought new damage, new losses. Smoke poured from several human ships, and one finally broke apart under a barrage of fire, vanishing in a flash of light. On the ground, the Marasi cried out as they saw the vessel fall. Yet even in loss, the humans fought with fury. The remaining ships closed ranks, covering the gap, striking harder than before. Reed's voice carried through the fleet channel. "We don't break. We don't back down. Every one of you knows what is at stake. Maras needs us. Stand fast." His words were simple, but they gave strength. Across every human ship, men and women steadied their hands and held their posts. The battle raged for hours. The skies above Meras became a graveyard of wreckage. Zor cruisers drifted lifeless, torn apart by daring human strikes. Yet the cost was heavy. Human ships burned as well, their hulls scarred, their crews pushed to the limit. At last, the Zor commander leaned back in his chair, his face twisting with anger. He had expected an easy victory, yet these humans refused to bow. They fought as if each second mattered more than a lifetime. His rage grew. "Prepare the ground forces," he barked. If they hold the skies, then we will burn the world itself. Let us see if these Deathworlders can be everywhere at once." On the Resolute, Reed listened as intelligence reports came in. Dropships from the Zor fleet were breaking away, heading for the planet's surface. His jaw tightened. "They are going after the cities," Hale said grimly. Reed's eyes hardened. "Then we go after them. Prepare landing teams. If they want the ground, they will have to fight us there too." And so, while the skies still burned, the war was about to move to the soil of Meras itself. The Zor dropships cut through the sky like black arrows. They pierced the atmosphere and spread wide across the continents of Meras. Their goal was simple: burn, capture, and break the people's will. The Merasi had no armies strong enough to resist them. The Council feared that once the Zor reached the ground, the humans would be forced to choose: defend the skies or save the cities. But Reed and his crew had no intention of choosing. On the Resolute, alarms sounded as new waves of enemy transports entered the lower atmosphere. Reed studied the tactical map, his eyes sharp. His officers waited for his decision. "They think numbers win wars," Reed said at last. "They don't understand how humans fight. We never face strength head-on if we don't need to. We break it piece by piece, and we make them believe they are winning, right until the moment they lose." His words carried across the fleet channel. Every pilot, every Marine, and every commander on the Earth ships listened. They understood that Reed was not planning a simple defense. He was planning to turn the Zor's own strength against them. The first part of the plan was deception. Human ships pulled back from direct combat, drifting into broken formation, as if they were too damaged to continue. The Zor commander saw it and laughed, thinking the enemy was finally retreating. He ordered his fleet to press harder, to push the humans into the atmosphere and trap them between space and the ground. But as the Zor advanced, they fell into hidden fire. Human ships, playing weak, had secretly positioned themselves in narrow arcs. When the Zor closed in, Earth's vessels turned and struck with all their weapons. Torpedoes and railguns tore into the enemy lines. 3 Zor cruisers vanished in a chain of fire before they understood it was a trap. The second part of the plan was speed. Human strike craft, small and agile, raced after the dropships entering the atmosphere. They did not try to destroy every transport. There were too many, but instead targeted the lead ships guiding the formations. Without their leaders, the rest broke apart, scattering in confusion. Some even crashed into each other, falling into the seas or burning against the mountains. On the ground, Merasi citizens watched with wide eyes as fire rained from the skies. But when they saw human fighters weaving among the falling debris, protecting the cities, they began to cheer. For the first time, they shouted the name of their protectors. "Humans! Humans!" The third part of Reed's plan was risk. He ordered landing teams of Earth Marines to drop directly into contested zones. Many of his officers hesitated. "Captain," Hale warned, "we are sending our people into heavy fire. The Zor will have numbers far greater than us." Reed's voice was calm but firm. "That's where we're strongest. On the ground, face to face. We've lived with storms, with predators, with a world that never gave us mercy. The Zor think numbers make them strong. They don't know what survival really means." And so, human transports roared down through the atmosphere, fire streaking across their hulls. They landed in burning cities, in forests already set ablaze, and in the ruins of villages under attack. From each ship, Marines stormed out with heavy armor and weapons, moving as if they carried the fury of Earth itself. The Zor expected them to break. Instead, the humans fought with cleverness. They did not stand in open lines where numbers could crush them. They moved through alleys, forests, and broken buildings, striking from angles the Zor did not expect. They turned the cities into traps, guiding enemy troops into choke points where explosives waited. Marasi citizens watched in wonder as humans taught them to fight in small groups, to defend their homes with simple tactics. A young Marasi soldier stood beside a human marine and asked, "How do you fight with so few?" The human smiled grimly. "Because we don't need many. We only need enough." In the council chamber, reports began to change. Instead of endless losses, they heard stories of Zor squads cut down in ambushes, of human-led teams retaking bridges and strongholds, of civilians rescued and carried to safety. Lyra listened, her eyes filling with hope she had thought lost. Still, the Zor pressed harder. Their commander grew furious as his troops reported delay after delay, loss after loss. "These humans are vermin," he snarled. "They crawl through shadows and strike like beasts. Crush them. Burn the world if you must." But the more he raged, the calmer Reed became. On the Resolute, he studied the battle map again. The Zor fleet still held the advantage in numbers, but their strength was no longer united. Their ground forces were scattered, their ships spread too thin trying to chase small, fast-moving human groups. Reed leaned closer to his officers. "This is how we win. We don't fight them where they are strongest. We fight them where they are weakest. We turn their size into weight that drags them down." And slowly, piece by piece, the tide of the war began to shift. The war had moved from the stars to the soil of Meras. The skies still burned with wreckage, but now the streets, forests, and plains of the planet shook under heavy boots. Zor troops poured out of their dropships in great numbers. They were taller than the Marasi, covered in thick armor, and carried heavy weapons that glowed with cruel light. The Marasi had never seen such soldiers. Their own guards were trained for peacekeeping, not battle. Against the Zor they scattered quickly, retreating to the cities in fear. Many believed that even with the human fleet above, nothing could save them on the ground. But then the humans arrived. Earth Marines landed in squads across the world. Their transports descended into fire, and when the doors opened, soldiers rushed, out with purpose in every step. Their armor was scarred from old battles, their weapons heavy and precise. Where the Zor looked strong because of size, the humans looked strong because of will. In the city of Raylan, one of the largest on Meras, the Zor advanced down the central streets. They set fire to towers, forcing civilians to flee. Just as the Zor prepared to seize the council hall, human marines appeared from hidden positions. They rose from alleys, rooftops, and tunnels, striking all at once. Explosions shattered the street and smoke filled the air. The Zor commander on the ground shouted in fury, expecting the humans to break under pressure. But the humans moved like shadows, never staying in one place long enough to be pinned. A squad of 5 Marines held an entire street, moving between cover, striking fast, and pulling back before the Zor could bring their full numbers to bear. The Marasi watched in amazement. Some civilians who had hidden in fear began to join the humans. A Marine handed a Marasi youth a small weapon and showed him how to cover the doorways. "Aim steady," the human said, "and protect your people." For the first time, the Marasi fought not with fear, but with courage. In another city, human engineers set up defenses within hours. They built barricades from fallen stone and twisted metal, turning ruins into fortresses. They guided Marasi families into shelters and placed guards to protect them. A Marasi elder, watching this work, whispered to herself, "They are not just warriors. They are builders. They are guardians." The Zor grew more desperate. Their numbers pressed down on every front, but the humans used the terrain in ways the Zor never expected. In the forests, human squads set traps among the trees. Zor soldiers stumbled into pits, wires, and falling logs. In the deserts, humans moved at night, striking supply convoys and vanishing before dawn. Every day the Zor lost more than they gained, and every day the Marasi gained more faith. Lyra and the Council received reports from across the planet. At first, they thought the stories were exaggerations, but soon they saw proof with their own eyes. Human-led teams retook villages thought lost. Human Marines carried Marasi children to safety under fire. Even in the darkest hours, the humans never abandoned the weak. Still, the cost was heavy. Human squads were few, and every loss cut deep. The Council wept when they heard of Marines who fought until their last breath to hold bridges or delay enemy forces. Yet Reed's voice over the fleet channel never wavered. "Every minute we hold, every life we save, it matters." The Zor think, "We are broken, but every battle they lose to us, their power weakens. Stand firm. We are not finished." The Marasi began to see the truth of those words. Where once they ran, now they stood. They followed the humans into battle, guided by their courage. Farmers who had never held weapons before joined barricades. Scholars helped repair equipment, turning their knowledge into strength. Children carried supplies to safe shelters. The spirit of the people changed, and it was the humans who lit that fire. One evening, in the ruins of a burned village, a Marasi boy looked at a human Marine resting by a wall. The boy asked softly, "Why do you fight for us? You do not even know us." The Marine looked at him, tired but smiling. "Because one day, someone might need to fight for us, and if no one stands up for others, then no one is safe." Those words spread across the planet like another kind of fire. The Marasi repeated them in the streets, in shelters, in the halls of the Council. It became a new kind of strength, born not from numbers, but from belief. Above, the Zor commander raged. His fleet still filled the skies, yet every day he lost ground on the planet below. His pride burned hotter than his weapons. He had crushed many worlds, but never had such a small enemy slowed him for so long. On the Resolute, Reed studied the reports. His ships were damaged, his soldiers exhausted, but his voice was steady. He turned to Hale and said, "The Zor believe we cannot endure, but endurance is what humans are built for. We will hold until they break." The war was not yet over, but the people of Meros no longer saw themselves as lost. They had seen what the Deathworlders could do, and now they stood beside them. The war across Meros had reached its breaking point. For weeks, the humans and Marasi had fought side by side. They had defended cities, retaken villages, and turned forests and deserts into traps. Yet the Zor still held great power. Their ships filled the skies, their armies marched across the land, and their commander's rage only grew. From his massive flagship, the Zor Lord stared at the planet with hatred. His voice thundered through his fleet. "These humans bleed, yet they will not fall. Then we will strike their heart. Prepare every weapon. We will burn their fleet from the sky and show this world what fear truly means." The Zor began to gather their ships into one massive formation. Instead of scattered strikes, they would now move as a single crushing wave. If they succeeded, the human fleet would be destroyed, and the ground forces would soon follow. On the Resolute, Captain Reed studied the reports in silence. His officers looked tense. Hale spoke first. "Captain, if they move as one, we cannot hold them. Their numbers are too great." Reed's jaw tightened, but his eyes held steady. Numbers are their strength, but they are also their weakness. The bigger they gather, the harder they fall if we strike at the right point. He pointed to the tactical map, where the flagship of the Zor sat at the center of the formation. That ship is their pride. It commands their fleets, drives their will. If we take it out, the rest will break. They fight for fear and power. If we shatter their leader, we shatter them. The plan was dangerous. Boarding the Zor flagship meant sending soldiers into the teeth of the enemy. Many might not return, but every officer on the bridge knew there was no other choice. Reed opened the fleet channel. His voice reached every human ship and every Marine on the ground. "The Zor think this is the end. They think we will kneel under their strength. But we are not here to kneel. We are here to stand. Our target is their flagship. Strike teams will board it. The fleet will cover them. This is the moment we turn the tide." Across the fleet, tired men and women lifted their heads. Their hands steadied on their controls. In the cities, the Marasi heard the plan and whispered prayers of hope. Lyra stood in the council hall and said softly, "If they succeed, our world will be free. If they fail, we all fall. May the stars guide them." The operation began at dawn. Human ships formed into tight groups, moving faster than the Zor expected. Instead of spreading thin, they punched directly toward the center. The Zor fleet roared to meet them, but the humans twisted through the fire, ignoring smaller ships and driving straight for the flagship. From the ground, the people of Meras saw streaks of light tear across the sky. They knew this was not just another battle. This was the strike that would decide everything. Human fighters cleared the path, diving into enemy lines and exploding in bright flashes to open gaps. Transports carrying Marines raced forward, shields burning under enemy fire. One by one, they broke through and latched onto the hull of the Zor flagship. Explosions shook its surface as boarding clamps locked in place. Inside, human soldiers stormed through dark metal corridors. The air smelled of smoke and fuel. Zor warriors came at them in waves, roaring with fury. The humans fought back with relentless skill. They moved in pairs, covered each other, and never wasted a shot. For every human who fell, 3 Zor were cut down. Reed himself led one of the teams. His rifle burned hot in his hands as he pushed through the enemy halls. His voice echoed in the comms. "Stay moving. Don't give them time to regroup. We take the bridge, and we end this." The battle inside the flagship raged. Human grenades tore open sealed doors. Zor soldiers tried to trap them in narrow corridors, but the humans pushed forward like a storm. Slowly, step by step, they climbed toward the command deck. At last, they burst into the great hall where the Zor commander waited. He rose from his iron chair, towering above them in heavy armor. His voice shook the chamber. "You fragile creatures dare stand before me? I have crushed empires. I will crush you too." Reed leveled his weapon, but his voice was calm. You are not fighting empires today. You are fighting humans, and we do not break. The hall erupted in fire. Marines charged, striking with everything they had. The commander fought back with the strength of a beast, but humans pressed him from every side. His roars grew weaker as the fight dragged on. At last he fell, his armor shattered, his weapon broken. The human stood over his body, breathing. Heavy, but unbowed. Reed looked at his team. Signal the fleet. The flagship is ours. In space, the Zor formation faltered. Their commander's silence spread panic. Their ships hesitated, then began to break apart. Without their leader's iron hand, their will collapsed. Human ships surged forward, striking the disorganized enemy with precision. One by one, the Zor fled or burned. On the surface of Maras, cheers rose from every city, every village, every shelter. The skies that had once been filled with fear now carried the light of victory. The people lifted their voices, crying the name of their protectors. Humans! Humans! Lyra stood at the council window, watching the dawn rise. Her eyes were full of tears, but her voice was strong. They came when no one else did. They stood when no one else would. And because of them, our world lives. The tide of war had turned. But for Captain Reed and his crew, the fight was not only about saving Maras. It was about proving a truth the galaxy had long ignored. Deathworlders were not to be feared for their savagery. They were to be respected for their strength to protect. The fall of the Zor flagship spread across the battlefield like thunder. The once proud fleet of conquerors broke apart. Some ships turned and fled, their commanders unwilling to face the same fate as their leader. Others fought for a few more desperate, minutes before human guns silenced them. In the skies above Maras, silence slowly replaced fire. On the ground, Zor soldiers who had once marched with pride now found themselves leaderless. Without their fleet above and their commander to guide them, their lines crumbled. Human Marines pressed hard, pushing them out of the cities and villages they had tried to claim. Marasi citizens, inspired by their defenders, joined the effort, surrounding stragglers and forcing them to surrender. For the first time since the invasion began, the land of Maras belonged once again to its people. The humans did not celebrate with loud triumph. Their joy was quieter, born of exhaustion and relief. On the Resolute, Reed stood on the bridge as damaged ships limped back into formation. Fires were still being put out, hulls still patched, but they were alive. Hale approached him, her voice tired but steady. "We did it, Captain," she said. "The Zor are in retreat. Maras is free." Reed looked out at the planet below. He thought of the Marines who would not return, the ships lost in the void. Victory always carried a cost, but it was worth it when a world was saved. He gave a small nod. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. The Zor will remember this day, and so will the galaxy." Down on the surface, the Council of Maras gathered with survivors and leaders from across the planet. They stood in the square of the capital city, the same square where fear had once held them silent. Now, the people filled the streets, their voices carrying in waves. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes lifted to the skies. She spoke so all could hear. "We sent a call for..." help into the stars. We thought no one would answer. We thought our world would be another name added to the long list of the conquered. But then came the humans. They came not for reward, not for power, but because we cried out. And because of them, our children will live. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some Marasi wept openly, others shouted the names of the human Marines they had seen fighting beside them. The word human became a chant, echoing through the city. When Reed and his officers later stood before the council, Lyra bowed her head low. "Captain, we are forever in your debt. Tell us what you require, and it will be yours. Land, resources, whatever we have, we will give." But Reed shook his head. His answer was simple. "We require nothing. We came because you asked. That is enough." The council looked at him in disbelief. Across the stars, every empire they knew demanded payment for aid, sometimes even rule over the rescued world. Yet these humans wanted nothing but to see Mera safe. That truth struck the Marasi more deeply than any battle. In the days that followed, humans worked beside the Marasi to rebuild. Engineers helped repair power grids and water lines. Medics tended to the wounded, both human and Marasi alike. Children gathered around human soldiers, asking endless questions about Earth, about what kind of world could raise such people. The answers filled them with awe. Reports of the victory spread faster than light. Traders carried stories to nearby systems, then to faraway empires. In taverns and council halls, the tale was told again and again. The Deathworlders came. They stood against the Zor and did not fall. They fought not for gain, but for others. For the first time, the galaxy began to see humans in a new way. Not as reckless newcomers, not as fragile bodies from a violent planet, but as protectors who chose to fight when others would not. The Zor, humiliated, withdrew into the shadows of their empire. Their leaders whispered in anger, vowing revenge. Yet even they knew something had changed. Fear alone would not keep the galaxy under their control, not while humans walked among the stars. One evening, Reed stood outside the rebuilt council hall with Lyra at his side. They watched as Marasi children played in the square, their laughter rising into the air. The scars of war were still visible, but life had returned. Lyra turned to him. "Before this war, we thought strength belonged only to those who could conquer. You have shown us that strength is something else. It is the will to protect, even when the cost is high. We will never forget." Reed gave a small smile. "Then remember this. One day, someone else will send a call like you did. When that day comes, answer it. That is how we build a galaxy worth living in." Her eyes shone as she nodded. "We will." The fleet of Earth prepared to leave soon after. Their ships rose into the sky, battered but unbroken. The people of Meros filled the streets once more, waving to the vessels above. They knew they were, watching more than ships depart. They were watching the birth of a new legend, and so when the story was told in the years to come, it was spoken with awe. A world cried out in despair. No empire answered. No allies came. Only the Deathworlders. The humans heard the call, and when they came, they did not bring chains. They brought hope.